Yeah, here on Joy News Desk. Now, former Attorney General Martin Amidu says current AG Marietta Brew appeal upon is biased and cannot lead the appeal against Alfred Woyome in the 51 million cedi judgment debt saga. According to Mr. Amidu, the Attorney General's former law firm, Letha Brew & Co., were lawyers for Austro Invest, a joint beneficiary company with Woyome. These and many other revelations are captured in a rejoinder Mr. Amidu wrote to Graphic Online, and Francisca Kakra-Forson has been reading Mr. Amidu's rejoinder. Francisca is here with me in the studio. She'll share with us some details of this. Thank you very much for being here, Francisca. What other details does Mr. Amidu share in his rejoinder?
Great, Camille. So let's explain the basis on which he's making these accusations. In the statement, Mr. Amidu says that because Letha Brew & Company were acting as lawyers for Austro Invest, they assumed certain obligations, and these obligations are to protect the interests of Austro Invest. That's the Attorney General's firm will be protecting the interest of Austro Invest. And because of that, Mr. Amidu is saying that she lacks the impartiality or the objectivity to represent the Republic of Ghana in any case involving Alfred Woyome. And we know that the AG has said that she's going forward with the appeal against the acquittal of Alfred Woyome. He explains that she will, in her official capacity, be more inclined to prosecute or amend charges which will protect Austro Invest at the expense of Woyome and even, if possible, the state. Now, he talks about Ray Smith. Ray Smith is a British national who's resident in Ghana. And Mr. Amidu says that he's a sole shareholder of Austro Invest and also has shares in Waterville. Waterville is a Ghanaian company in which Alfred Woyome acted as an alternate director. Mr. Amidu is asking a question. He says, why is Mr. Smith not treated as a suspect in the criminal case? And we knew that in the criminal case at the High Court, it was Mr. Woyome who was the suspect, who was suspected to have caused financial loss, etc., etc. So he's asking why Ray Smith, whose company is a joint beneficiary to Mr. Woyome and Waterville, and they sought for this money, were not part of it. Now, he's suggesting that the relationship of Letha Brew & Company as private lawyers to President Mahama, who appointed Madame Marietta Brew upon as AG, should not be overlooked. He's saying that Ghanaians cannot be faulted if they speculate that because of this relationship among these persons, the president, the firm, that's Letha Brew & Company, Ray Smith, and the NDC government, in the whole Woyome scam. He's saying it's the fundamental reason for the unprofessional manner in which the criminal and constitutional matter is being handled and also was handled. Now, Mr. Amidu cites a letter dated 18th August 2009. He says this letter was signed by Mr. Woyome on behalf of Austro Invest. That's the company the AG's firm represented. And on his own behalf. And they wrote to the then Attorney General, that's Madam Betty Moldy Drusu, and made a claim to be paid 51 million cedis in judgment debts. Now, we know Mr. Amidu has been in court personally about the 51 million cedis. He's been at, he's been at the Supreme Court, and he says he filed a writ to include Austro Invest as a defendant in the case, but that was not allowed. And so he did some investigations. He caused some investigations to be done. And what emerged was that Austro Invest was liquidated in 2011, indeed 26th July 2011, and no longer existed. And so he couldn't be served with that notice. Now he questions, and I quote, or he says, and I quote, the role played by Letha Brew & Co. as lawyers for Austro Invest, which they knew had been liquidated, was what moved me to complain at the Supreme Court about what and I refers to Martin Amidu, perceived to be the professional misconduct of the firm in holding out a liquidated foreign registered company as one having capacity to sue. Now, Mr. Amidu says the firm and Ray Smith could be liable for perjury because they deposed certain affidavits in the High Court, and none of this came up. He goes on to say that at the Supreme Court, that was last year, 29th July, there was a unanimous decision in the case, that's one of the cases that he is pursuing, which ordered Woyome and the others, Waterville, etc., to pay back the money they obtained fraudulently. And he says that clearly shows how Austro Invest is involved in all of this scam. And he says that there's also a statement, in his statement, he also made a request to the government then that Mrs. Betty Mould-Idrisu, who was then the Attorney General, should be made a prosecution witness. But he says that was rejected and he lost his job. Now, another accusation is against the current AG is that she omitted declarations affecting Austro Invest, which is the company she represented, and also affecting former Attorney General Betty Mould-Idrisu from the entry of judgment she made at the Supreme Court during that case. And so he adds that their conduct in facilitating the gargantuan payment were declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court.
When you look at Martin Amidu's rejoinder and you compare that with Woyome's open letter to the Attorney General, going through both letters, what do you see?
Woyome's letter suggested that the Attorney General steps aside because of a possible bias against him. Now, this statement coming from Mr. Martin Amidu also gives the impression that indeed there is that possible bias. You know, he talks about her obligations at the time she was representing Austro Invest could make her act in Austro Invest's favor, and that could be to the detriment of Mr. Woyome. So the impression from Mr. Amidu's statement is that it corroborates the claim by Mr. Woyome that there could be some bias to some extent, that there could be some bias against his person. That's Mr. Woyome.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Francisca, for sharing the details of this rejoinder with us. But the Attorney General has been responding to, she says that, well, she denies the accusation that she omitted declarations affecting Austro Invest and AG at the time Betty Mould-Idrisu, whose conduct in the fraudulent payments, Mr. Amidu says, was declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court when she filed entry of judgment in the case. And so she's reacted to it. She's denied those accusations. There's more to come here. Don't go away.